Greetings, I'm the Vulgarian Troglodyte, a mere mortal who uses his unrefined eyes to see past the nightmarish quotidian world and who tries to experience as many post-divine aesthetic pleasures as he can. But anyway, I'm trying to work on a new intro to my videos. Today's video topic is my top 100 favorite Japanese films of all time. So as I did the Kinema Jumbo reaction video, I thought that I would do my own top 100 of Japanese films. Although the key difference here is that this is a favorites list, not a greatest films of all time list. So the only thing I consider here is that how much I like a film. So things like influence and importance don't really matter here. It's only my personal opinion and my own taste. And I created this list quite quickly this morning while I was listening to some Madonna. Because of course, two of my favorite things in the world are Madonna and Japanese films and Japanese culture in general. But yeah, it was quite easy to figure out what the 100 films should be, but what always kills me is when I have to put the films in order. So take this order with a grain of salt, as next week it might be a bit different. And I often notice afterwards when I'm editing these videos that I should have put that film over that film. Well, I think this is probably mostly pretty accurate ranking, but I might get angry over some of my choices later on. But yeah, that's life. That's the life of an cinephile and art lover, I guess. But yeah, definitely let me know your favorites and your top 100 or top 10, top 5, top 50, whatever. And also, if you get any new recommendations from here and you end up watching those films, definitely let me know your thoughts, whether they are positive or negative. So I'm not going to talk about these films that much, as I've talked about most of these films on my channel. And as there are 100 films, so it would take too long if I rambled on all of them. And many of these will be covered in my podcast in the future, and some of them already have been covered. But anyway. Let's start. And we are going to start from number 1, because that's how Letterboxd works. But we, of course, have two Masaki Kobayashi films here. We have Harakiri, and then I guess you could see this as a small cheat, but I have the whole Human Condition trilogy, as I kind of think of it as a one piece instead of 3 different pieces. But these could be also the other way around, but I think Harakiri is maybe a bit more watchable, but I think the Human Condition is maybe slightly better objectively. But both of them are very dense films, beautifully shot, great main characters. There's so much to analyze in both films. They kind of tell you so much about the human condition, like one of the titles suggests. They're very political films. They tackle ideas like authority and power and ideology and freedom and many different things, hierarchies. Yeah, but incredible films that you probably at least have heard of. Then I just did a podcast episode on this. I think it was 75 minutes long, where we went on very deeply on this very difficult film. But it's Kizu Yoshida's Heroic Purgatory, a very incomprehensible film that has so many political and psychological layers to it, and also aesthetic layers, as it has such a weird composition style that I absolutely love. So yeah. Then we have Kenshi Mizoguchi's Shansho the Bailiff, an incredible work both aesthetically and thematically, but also in how much it creates this emotional connection between the film and the viewer, because it's all about human cruelty. So you really feel for these people here, and it really makes you angry about the world, even though, of course, many things have gotten better scenes, but many of the same problems still exist in the world. So, but yeah, incredible masterpiece. Then we have the Sword of Doom, and if this was an objective list, greatest films of all time list, this would definitely be way lower. but I've just absolutely loved this film since I first watched it in 2017. It was actually the first Criterion I ever bought, so yeah. It's starring the great Tatsuya Nakada. It's also starring Toshiro Mifune. It's very nihilistic. It's very violent and dark, but kind of beautiful in that kind of macabre way and very dark way. Incredibly shot as well. Beautiful set pieces, locations. Tatsuya Nakada is in absolute top form. And even though Toshiro Mifune's role is a very small role, he ends up leaving a huge mark on the film. And there is this fight scene in the snow with Toshiro Mifune, which is one of my top 10 favorite scenes of all time out of any movie, probably. So, yeah. Then we have another Yoshida film, it's Eros Plus Massacre. And I'm talking about the longer cut here, by the way. Very difficult film. It has these time jumps. It ties in these two different worlds together, although they have very strong connection thematically, but the times are very different. Aesthetically, this has also the brutalist compositions and everything is maybe a bit more accessible than Heroic Purgatory, but yeah, probably Yoshida's most famous film. Then we have Sion Sono's Why Don't You Play in Hell, which is a film that I just enjoy so much. It's such a fun film. It's all about the nature of filmmaking. We have these young wannabe filmmakers who call themselves the fuck bombers, which is really funny. It's a very violent film as well. It has a meta element in the end where we kind of question like, is this film or is this their reality or what is this? So it's very interesting. It's a very fast-paced movie. It's constantly moving. There are insane hyper things happening all the time, but it's such a blast to watch. Then we have Toshio Matsumoto's Funeral Parade of Roses, the best Japanese queer film. I would say, although I haven't seen that many, as they haven't made so many, although I think these days they are making more. But yeah, incredible Japanese new wave film with very interesting style. It's like it mixes so many different elements together, and it lets us see this kind of a forgotten underground culture in Japan of the time. And yeah, it's very interesting both there's the subject matter, the people we see, but also aesthetically and how it's edited and everything like that. Yeah. Then we have another Sion Sono film. It's Love Exposure, often thought of as his magnum opus, a 4 hour film that just flies by. Yeah, it's a very lowbrow film in terms of the plot, but it also is actually a fairly deep and dense film that and the themes relate to things like religion and sin, and then there are definitely gender roles and things like that as well there, and also like father-son dynamic and many different things. But yeah, it's such a fun movie. Yeah, this one we will do for the podcast at some point, and hopefully we will do Why Don't You Play in Hell as well. And I mean, we are gonna do Eros Plus Massacre, Sword of Doom as well, and probably Harakiri too. So yeah, anyway, then you might be complaining about this as it is by Paul Schrader, who obviously is in Japanese, but I decided to include it here. But it's Mishima Life in 4 chapters, which to me is just one of the greatest of all time. Has some of the best cinematography of all time, so detailed, so beautiful, magical, even whimsical in a way, even though the subject matter is kind of the opposite of that in a way. Yeah, but such an incredible film and a very unique film as well, and definitely Paul Schrader's best film out of the ones that I have seen. There's no question about that in my mind. Then we have two Ozu films. It was really hard to say like which one should be on top, but we have his last film, An Autumn Afternoon, and then his most famous film, Tokyo Monogatari. And both of these are just desert island level masterpieces, just incredible films that explore generational differences, societal progress, family dynamics, other relationship dynamics, death and loss, things like that. Yeah, incredible films. I mean, an autumn afternoon doesn't really explore death that much, but Tokyo Story does. Yeah. Then we have my favorite anime film of all time. Again, this would be way lower if this was the greatest films of all time list, but this just hits the feels so much for me, so I have to have it so high. But it's the Silent Voice that we talked about on my podcast a couple months ago. We did like an hour long discussion on it, I think. So yeah, but I can just relate to this film so much and makes me so emotional. First time I watched it, it made me cry. On my second watch, it didn't, but I still got very hooked to it on my second watch. Can relate to multiple characters here, and yeah, it's just such an emotional watch, but also has such beautiful animation, great characters. Even though I know some people dislike the characters, but I like them actually, and yeah, to me this is like a perfect animated film, and I'm looking forward to reading the manga at some point too. Then we have Nagisa Ushima's Death by Hanging, which is this political satire about the capital punishment and also kind of the conflict, the tension between Korea and Japan. And yeah, it's a dark subject matter, but it's kind of funny at the same time. We see these um, authority figures who are just stupid idiots and stuff. Yeah, and incredibly aesthetically as well, even though much of it is in this kind of a fairly small building, I think, and stuff, but incredible film and very relevant still to this day. Then we have Terayama's Pastoral Die in the Country, a visual feast, all about the concept of time. But yeah, it's very hard to kind of analyze it thematically as it is just such a weird and different film and all about the aesthetic and the vibe. But yeah, but I love these types of films. Then we have another Terayama film, it's Farewell to the Ark, which is about cousins in love and chastity belts. Beautiful aesthetic, very taboo subjects, very weird plot, but very entertaining in a fucked up way. And yeah, great stuff. Then we have Like Father, Like Son that we will talk about a week from now on our podcast, so look out for that. But this is my favorite Koreeda film, at least based on this ranking. Again, nobody knows is in the conversation as well, and we will have that in a bit. But yeah, this really hits the feels. I think it has a very interesting plot where we see these two babies switch on the hospital just after they are born, and then they grow up in wrong families, and then they eventually families find out about what happened, and then there are lots of these conflicts and tensions, and then we talk about things like nature versus nurture, and also about like can you have a family when you aren't blood related and things like that that are very interesting themes that many people can relate to. Then we have Kamikaze Girls, which isn't the deepest film out there, but the aesthetic is just my aesthetic. I absolutely love the character of Momoko, but I also love the punk girl. And funnily enough, I watched this anime called Nana and also read the manga this year. Absolutely fell in love with that, but the theme song of that anime is actually sang by the punk girl from Kamikaze Girls, which was fun thing. And you can even see live performances on YouTube where the punk girl from Kamikaze Girls sings that song called Rose from that show, which I absolutely love. I still listen to it a lot, even though it's been a couple of months since I watched Nana. Yeah. Then we have Kitano's Hanabi, which is just incredibly beautiful film. Visually, it explores trauma. It has these bursts of violence, very interesting ending where we hear what happens, but we don't see it. Kitano is in top form, both as a director, but also as a actor, and great Shohei Haisi score as well. Then this, maybe I'm overrating it a bit here, but it's Ryusuke Hamaguchi's Drive My Car. But this just absolutely blew me away. It's a very kind of Romerian type of film. People walk around, sit around, drive around, and talk. That's my preferred type of movie these days. It's very interesting to follow these characters, and it explores theater and acting, but also loss and sorrow and depression and how to move away from those and how those things can stay with you for so long and so very relatable things. But yeah, visually also very naturalistic but very beautiful and absolutely love this film. Then this one we also talked about on the podcast. It's The Life of Oharu. Incredible, very bleak Misoguchi film about this journey that this woman goes through in this film and her life is full of misery. Like there is like constant awful things happening in her life and when she thinks that oh now I've got a break, then something even more horrible happens and yeah, incredible aesthetically like how the film starts and really immediately sets the mood with that bleak cinematography. Yeah, such an incredible film. Yeah, not necessarily something that you will watch all the time as it makes you feel like shit. Then Osu's Late Spring was lucky enough to see this one at the cinema as well. Seen it a couple of times. Yeah, incredible film, one of the best endings of all time that makes you teary-eyed. And also thematically, it tackles many similar themes as Tokyo Story and Autumn Afternoon. As Ozu was one of those very consistent directors who kind of went back to similar themes over and over again and then find like slightly different angles here and there. But yeah. Then we have the Nobody Knows that I already mentioned. This one I can also really relate to as it is about these children whose like mother leaves for long periods of time and then they have to survive on their own because I can have bit of that similar experience that as a kid I had to when I grew up very quickly as my mother was often away and then I was staying by myself and cooking for myself when I was very young and stuff. So yeah, I can relate to it a lot, but also just beautiful cinematography, great child performances, and beautiful movie, even though it's quite bleak in a way at the same time. Then I guess some people might complain about this one, because it is kind of a Russian film, but it's by a Japanese director. So it's by Akira Kurosawa and it's Dersu Usala. And to me, this actually might be Kurosawa's best film. I think it just combines both like entertainment value and interesting themes together really well. And then also I have big emotional connection to these characters as they are such great characters and yeah, aesthetically also a very beautiful movie. And I love these types of movies, so yeah. Then we have the second part of the Buddhist trilogy by Akio Shisoshi. It's Mandara, or sometimes called Mandala. Very difficult Japanese new wave film. I'm not necessarily sure what this film wants to say, but it's just so interesting aesthetically. It's very taboo breaking, weird, and off-putting in many ways, but I just love this type of thing. And then we have the first part of the Buddhist trilogy, This Transient Life, which is also incredible. This is maybe a bit more accessible than Mandala, but still a very difficult film with weird black and white aesthetic and incest and lots of taboo stuff as this. Obviously, Japanese New Wave is kind of known for saying fuck you to social norms and things and trying to do things that aren't necessarily acceptable in Japanese society or, to be honest, in the world. So yeah, great movies. Then we have Nobuhiko Obayashi's Chichuko's younger sister. This is quite hard to find, but I think it's often on YouTube, but in pretty bad quality. But this is such a dreamy, hypnotic, incredibly beautiful film with a Shohei Hisaishi score again. Yeah, it's about a family whose one of their daughters dies in a weird accident, but then the other daughter of the family starts seeing her dead sister, and then they can still hang out with each other even though the sister is dead. So it's weird. And it mixes that type of lowbrow thing with like beautiful visuals and stuff. Yeah, great film. This is actually a very recent watch for me, but this just absolutely blew me away. It's my favorite first time watch of the year in terms of films. If we count out shows, Nana is probably my favorite first time watch of the year, but or Your Lie in April, which is another anime show, but this is such an incredible film. actually reminded me of Heroic Purgatory, as this has a pretty incomprehensible plot with constant visual symbolism and really weird scenes. I was actually thinking um, that to me this felt like a mix of Bong Joon-ho and David Lynch because there are very strong Lynch vibes. And I've noticed in this era of Kurosawa's work that there are lots of Lynch vibes in many of his films. And you could also say that it's a mix of David Lynch and Kurosawa's own film Cure. Yeah, and this also has Koji Yakusho in great role. But this just absolutely blew me away. I'm not sure what it is about exactly. I think it's about like man's relationship with nature, but also kind of the disillusionment in Japanese society and things like that. But I'd love to do this for the podcast at some point where me and Altes could do like a very huge deep dive on this very complex film. Then we have Masumura's Red Angel, one of the best war films of all time. Very bleak, and it shows um, how awful many of the soldiers were. It shows kind of toxic masculinity and how women really suffered in the war. And it's a really bleak film, as barely anything positive happens in this film. It's all just awful and dark stuff. But great cinematography. Most of the film is in these kind of again this infirmary, these small spaces where wounded soldiers are treated and stuff. So yeah. Then we have Kurosawa's The Hidden Fortress. I've just always really loved this film. It's not one of his best, maybe, but it's definitely one of my absolute favorites. As it's just so entertaining. Love the bickering peasants. Love Mifune as his like very manly, masculine self. Yeah, I always love Mifune. And yeah, such a fun plot and such a funny movie. Yeah. Then we have another Terayama film. It's Throw Away Your Books, Rally in the Streets. This one I need to watch again, but it's maybe a bit more accessible than Pastoral to Die in the Country in terms of the plot, at least. And yeah, one of the essential films of the Japanese New Wave. Then we have Oshima's Gohatto or Taboo. I even have this poster as my avatar in Letterboxd. Yeah, so it's about this samurai establishment. This young guy goes there. The samurai fall in love with him. So it explores like masculinity and queerness in this kind of patriarchal, very traditional system. So it's very interesting, very taboo breaking in that way. But it also has this kind of mystery whodunit element to it that's very well done. It even has Kitano in a great role. It was Oshima's last film. I'm not sure whether I already said that. This one we will talk about on our next podcast episode. It's Chinua Chukamoto's Kotoko, all about mental illness with this kind of handheld, very off-putting cinematography. Very dark feel, very hard to watch. Makes you quite emotional and sad, but at the same time it's just so brilliant and different. And I love these types of films that explore like a character's psyche and things like that. Well, the next film is a bit similar. It's Shunshi Iwai's Picnic, which is situated in a mental hospital, and we see these mental patients and their life in the hospital, but also when they venture outside and have these weird trips. Such beautiful hypnotic cinematography, such a great way to create atmosphere through that cinematography, and such a fun and quirky film. Then we have Mizoguchi's Yugetsu ghost film, even though again has that ghost element. At the same time, if you remove that element, it feels like a quintessential Mizoguchi film. Those are the themes. Yeah, incredible film. Then we have Koreeda's Still Walking. This one we talked about on the podcast as well. Very low key film, but incredibly humanist and beautiful. Very Ozu like film in the way that it focuses on these family dynamics. Yeah, such a beautiful movie. Another Yoshida film, Confessions Among Addresses. This to me also has some Lynch vibes, even some Charlo vibes. And yeah, very weird film structurally, very different type of film. And and it's weird in a very different way than Heroic Purgatory, for example. Yeah, it's kind of a genre bender type of film at the same time as well. So beautiful movie. In the Rare Film website if you want to watch it. Then this was very high in the Kinema Jumbo list, I think top 3. And by the way, I'm gonna do another video about Kinema Jumbo, the readers list, which actually 200 films, and I think they had Floating Clouds in the top 5 as well. But yeah, incredible Naruse film, very bleak. I think Naruse falls somewhere in between Ozu and Mizoguchi. He kind of has elements from both of those giants of Japanese cinema, I think, yeah. Then we have Kwaidan, incredibly beautiful Kobayashi horror anthology film, 3 hours but flies by. Yeah. Then and this was big omission of the in the Kinema Jumbo list, I think. Then we have Kitano's Kikuchiro, which is a film that has quite a lots of cliches, but it just hits the feels so much for me, and it's just so entertaining, and that's one of my favorite musical scores of all time by Shohei Hisaishi as well. Yeah, such a great, very accessible film. Then another Naruse film, Sound of the Mountain. This is also a very Ozu-like film as it explores these family dynamics, although this is way more bleak than most Ozu films. We see this female character who has this very toxic husband, but then the husband's father is this very kind man, so it mixes this kind of conversation with um, about like cruelty and kindness. So we see a character that's like very kind, and then a character who is very cruel and toxic. So it gives an interesting contrast to the film. Then possibly Ozu's most bleak film, Tokyo Twilight, very Antonioni-esque film, how it shows Japan in a very alienating light. Then a very beautiful Japanese new wave film by Kazuo Kuroki, Silence Has No Wings. Yeah, all about, I think it's doesn't necessarily hit you in the head what the film is about, but I think it's about changing society and time and life cycles and things like that. Yeah, very beautiful movie. An underrated and underseen movie. Then we have another Mizoguchi film, The Crucified Lovers, or if you have the Criterion edition, it's called A Story from Chikamatsu. But we follow these two characters, and the title gives the plot away that we have these lovers, but their life is doomed due to the society around them. Hiroshi Teshigahara's The Face of Another, starring Tatsuya Nakadai, very bleak, off-putting film with such a creepy atmosphere, great performance from Nakadai, beautiful cinematography. Yeah, this might give you nightmares if you watch it. Yeah. Then we have another Kobayashi film, it's Samurai Rebellion. It's quite similar to Harakiri in the way that it's at first quite slow, but then it has this big climax in the end where everything just completely explodes. Yeah, great movie, not quite as great as Harakiri, but still great. Then we have Kurosawa's one of his best films, and I think this was the last collaboration that he did with Mifune. Beautifully humanist film. Yeah, one of his best looking films, I think, as well. It's just one of his, I think, deepest and the most humanistic and most beautiful and most thought-provoking films. Yeah. Then we have Woman in the Dunes, another Teshigahara film. Both of these films are based on a Kobo Abe novels, I think, which I need to read. But Woman in the Dunes has this like very haunting atmosphere, very darkly beautiful film, quite a way weird film, but an utter classic. Then Angel's Egg by Mamoru Oshii, really dark animated film with some of the best looking animation ever. And this film has constant visual symbolism. It has lots of like religious undertones to it. But you can just watch this due to the aesthetic, as it will just transport you into a different world, and it will just completely blow you away. I think such a great movie. This is usually on YouTube in great quality if you want to see it. Then we have Kiki's Delivery Service by Hayao Miyazaki. Yeah, such a beautiful movie. Great characters, beautiful animation that goes without saying, great music, great story. Yeah. Then we have Hamaguchi's Wheel of Fortune and Fantasy that is divided into three different vignettes. All of the vignettes are great, very low key. Stories that focus on like just a couple characters and their conversations. Yeah, it's very hilarious. The second one, when this young woman goes into a professor's office and they read the professor's book and talk about things, it's just so uncomfortable and awkward, but in a really funny way. Yeah, this is such a great movie. Very Romerian film as well. Then we have My Neighbor Totoro. Made me cry the last time I watched it in the end. Yeah, such a simple film, but very beautiful and whimsical and magical film. Then we have Yoshimitsu Morita's Haru. It's about these early days of the internet and how people formed relationships there. And we see these two people in particular forming a lasting relationship through online forums and email. It's just so beautiful and relatable and yeah, great love story. Then we have Sunshi Iwai's Hannah and Alice, which is a love triangle with this very beautiful hypnotic cinematography with lots of comedy and intrigue. Such a fun movie, very beautiful movie. This one we talked about on the podcast. It's Sion Sono's Love and Peace. Kouki o rimpi kuni mukete, kono kuni wa yondon yutaka ni natteku. Yeah, I just cannot like not sing that when I see this poster because I just love that song and I sing it all the time. And in that podcast, I sang the whole song, by the way, if you're interested. Then we have Koreda's debut feature. It's Maboroshi, one of his most beautiful films that tackles loneliness. Very simple story, very relatable in many ways, and makes you very emotional. Then Seven Samurai. Many people would say it should be higher, but again, this favorites and not the greatest list. Then again, German director, it's Perfect Days by Wim Wenders, but this just absolutely blew me away. I love these types of simple slice of life films. Then we have Happiness of Us Alone, very Naruse-esque film. It's kind of predictable in a way, the ending. But yeah, it's such a beautiful, very humanist film. Yeah, not many people have seen it. It's not available in many places, but I loved it when I watched it. And this is the Samurai one, but this is supposed to represent the whole trilogy. Such fun movies with great action scenes, with a love triangle, beautiful cinematography, and Toshiro Mifune in top form. Then another Japanese new wave film is Koji Wakamatsu's Go Go Second Time Virgin, one of the best film titles of all time. Another really weird, taboo breaking film, quite off putting, uncomfortable. Probably many people would hate this film, but I love it. Yeah. Then another Ozu film, The End of Summer. I think this is slightly underrated. I think it's one of his best. Late Autumn, another great late career film from Ozu. Then Obayashi's His Motorbike, Her Island. Extremely beautiful film all about like young love and things like that and how it is so strong and beautiful, but also very short-lived at the same time, often ending in tragedy. Then Shinji Aoyama's Eureka, which is this towering masterpiece that will hit your feels very hard and very unique film at the same time. And I feel like if I did this list after I have watched this film again, I think this might be way higher. So I really desperately need to watch it again. Then we have Rashomon, first Kurosawa film I ever watched. Then another Ozu film, Equinox Flower. another kind of underrated one. Then we have Sion Sono's The Forest of Love deep cut. So this is the longer cut found on Netflix. Such an insane ride this series is, with lots of twists and turns. Yeah, such an entertaining watch. Tsukamoto's Gemini. It's actually a very Terayama-esque film, I think, visually. How it uses color, for example. It really reminds me of Terayama. But this to me is Tsukamoto's best looking film. It just looks absolutely incredible and yeah, great vibe as well and great movie in general. Then we have Hausu by Obayashi, really famous horror comedy, really weird stuff with great soundtrack. Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence, an Oshima film, perhaps his most famous as it has David Bowie, for example. Great stuff. Hamaguchi's Happy Hour, a very long, very slow-paced film, but with incredible dialogue, great naturalistic performances, and it really uh, puts a spell on you, even though there isn't that much happening in it. There's just something so fascinating about these characters' fairly mundane lives. Then we have Hachiko about the dog Hachiko, this beautiful Akita dog whose owner died, but the dog could never forget his owner. Yeah, I've been in a dog video watching Mood, so this reminded me of that. Although I haven't watched Akita videos, I've been watching videos about various different kinds of mastiffs. So English Mastiff, Cane Corso, Yoko Argentino, and yeah, yeah. But anyway, I love mastiffs. They are so beautiful. Yeah. Then we have Masahiro Shinoda's Ballad of Orin, which follows this blind woman and her struggles do, uh, in this kind of cruel patriarchal Japanese society. So a very dark film. Then another Yoshida film, Woman of the Lake, one of his weirdest films with incredible aesthetic. This one I'm planning to rewatch very soon. Throne of Blood, Kurosawa's Macbeth adaptation. Yeah, so many incredible scenes in this film. Like the ending sequence is absolutely incredible, one of the best sequences in cinema history. Mifune is in top form here. Such an entertaining, fun movie. Then we have Hideaki Anno's Ritual. I got into this last year after I watched Neon Genesis Evangelion for the first time. I actually like Ritual more than Evangelion, so that's maybe a hot take, but yeah, I really love this one. Then we have Imamura's Vengeance is Mine, probably his best film. Yeah, quite um a dark film, very off-putting film. Yeah, not for everybody. But if you like those dark thriller type of films, I think you would love this film. Another Yoshida film, Story Written with Water, which I think was the beginning for his weirder style, although it's not as weird as Heroic Purgatory. But yeah, I still don't fully know what to think of the kind of complex themes of this film. I'm still a bit confused on what the film is truly about, but I really love the aesthetic and love the film in general. Then we have Imamura's The Insect Woman, another aesthetic marvel, another dark movie, one of his early films, but one of his best films at the same time. Then we have Keikumai's The Long Darkness, which is this simple love story. It's all about life and living kind of a life where not much happens, but there's certain beauty in that simplicity. And this is the type of film that I think will get better and better the older I get. When I've gotten more and more life experiences, it's one of those films. We even have these train sequences that I think represent life moving forward. And yeah, such a beautiful humanist film. Then we have Kaneto Shindo's The Naked Island, another very beautiful film. I think it's almost like a silent film. People don't really say anything in it, but it's just one of those aesthetically beautiful films that you love to watch. Then we have Mikio Narusei's Yearning, really brutal film, very sad film, but achingly beautiful. Then a Terayama short film, Grass Labyrinth. It's like 30 minutes long, I think, and another visual feast which you can also see from the poster. Sion Sono's Anti-Porno. It's a fairly complex movie. It explores, I think, sexuality, what it means to be a woman. It also has that kind of a meta element. It starts with this weird scene and then it kind of sweeps the rock under your feet and ends up being something very different than you think in the beginning. Yeah, great movie. Then another recent watch, it's Kiyoshi Kurosawa's Retribution from 2006. Kind of a serial killer ghost type of film. Very creepy. His aesthetic is just so good around this time. Like those shots that he has are so great, and the contrast, the attention to detail, yeah, the angles, everything is just absolutely perfect. And Koji Yakusho is so good in this one as well. It's a very emotional film in a weird way as well. Then Sion Sono's one of his serial killer films, Goldfish. This kind of a dark comedy. To me, I actually laughed quite a lot when I watched this. It's quite over the top in many ways. Yeah. Then we have Hanagatami, one of Obayashi's latest works before he passed away. But incredible masterpiece. Yeah. Then this is another recent watch, Kiyoshi Kurosawa's Pulse, one of his most famous films, all about computers and how they kind of alienate us. We are supposed to be more connected with the internet and stuff, but then we end up being more isolated. And he kind of predicted that in this film from 2001, which is very impressive. Koreeda's Afterlife, which I saw in the cinema, such a beautiful movie. 10 more to go. Neon Genesis Evangelion, the end of Evangelion. Absolutely love this shot that is in the poster and those shots with these huge heads. They're just so majestic and beautiful in a weird way. Yeah, I don't know whether this is better than the show, but I think they are both incredible and will destroy your brain as they are so dense and weird. But yeah, another Kiyoshi Kurosawa film, Tokyo Sonata, a film that can turns the plot on its head. Towards the end, it ends up being something very different than you think at first. Tokyo Godfather is my favorite Satoshi Kon film. It's maybe his most simple film, but to me most relatable and beautiful film at the same time. Such a fun movie as well. Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, great Studio Ghibli film. Another great Ghibli film is Whisper of the Heart. Then we have this Hideo Kojima film Goyoking with Tatsuya Nakadai. Great snowy samurai film, very dark, great sword fight scenes and interesting plot. Yeah. The Whispering Star, Sion Sono's slow cinema sci-fi film where not much happens, but it's absolutely beautiful aesthetically, and it really shows Sion Sono's range in this film. Then a silent film, A Page of Madness, probably the most famous Japanese silent film. I think some of this film was lost, so when you watch it, it isn't the whole film, but it still manages to be a masterpiece. Princess Mononoke, really need to rewatch this, but one of the better Ghibli films. Then Matsumoto's Demons, which is a very weird film, very different from Funeral Parade of Roses, but still incredible. But yeah, that was my top 100. Yeah, many of these will be covered in the podcast, like I said. And yeah, let me know your favorites. Let me know what you think of any of these films here. And of course, there are so many great and good Japanese films that I had to leave out of my list, unfortunately. But yeah, thanks for watching. Look out for more Japanese film content. Sayonara and arigato gozaimashita.